let's start off and listen to the wonderful keynote of Professor Frank Wang.
Morning again. My name is Frank Wang. Thank you, Chair. I'm going to discuss this topic with you. I think the presentation should be very interactive. Please stop me at any time point if you like. Shall we discuss this?
I have to check this.
Okay. Because the title of my presentation is Look to the Future, before that, shall we briefly review the history of computer science? I think modern computer science, we have to go back for nearly 200 years. Just in London here, a gentleman called Charles Babbage, who built the first computer in the world. Namely, it was a mechanical computer. I don't know, you have traveled around in London. So if you go to Science Museum, not far from Hyde Park, you should still see this computer there. Even this gentleman's brain were preserved in a jar. So Charles Babbage, a genius engineer in London. So who originated new era, computer science era, so nearly 200 years ago. We got other great names to be mentioned here, and Alan Turing, namely father of computer science. So 2 years ago, 2012, it was his year. It was his century. We called it Turing century. 2 years ago, at the head of school, I organized a trip for all my members of staff. We pay visit to a place, as you can see here, Bletchley Park. Have you heard of this? So in World War II, and Turing as a professor in mathematics, Cambridge University professor, and led a team there in building the first modern semi-programmable half mechanic computer in the world. So we label this trip as a worship trip in memory of father of computer science to a holy place. So Alan Turing, father of computer science, 2 years ago, it was his century. This is a computer, where is Bletchley Park? Not far from London. So I think by train 1 hour near Milton Keynes. You may put in your traveling list if you like. Today I'm going to discuss future computers. I would like to mention this name, my friend, Professor Leon Chai, a retired professor from University of California, inventor of a technique called memristor, could be key element of future computers. Britain has a special contribution to computer science. So I have mentioned a few names already. So this is number 3, Tim Berners-Lee, the father of World Wide Web, graduated from Oxford University in 1990-1980. He worked in Geneva, CERN, a European organization, 20,000 scientists working there. And he set up the first server in the world to enable 20,000 scientists to look up each other's telephone numbers, as simple as that. But new era, World Wide Web. We got other names, and Professor Steve Ferber got a special contribution. Last year, he was awarded this medal, so in brain computers. So after having reviewed the brief history, I think we should be in a better position and to look to the future. So today I'm going to cover a few things which more or less reflect our research activities. So first one is the cloud, big data, second green, and the third brain, last future. We have published quite a few papers in cloud computing and big data. The latest one is IEEE Big Data Conference in Alaska just a few weeks ago. I would show you a demo here, a new data communication protocol for big data on the cloud. We have published on IEEE transactions, ACM operating system reviews. So some background for this research. What makes data big? I think is common facts. And the data is more than doubling each year, and the rich data, and if you change the format, obviously you have to increase the volume of your data storage. The internet changed people's expectation. Most of data stored in relational database. Actually, nowadays, a non-relational database becomes popular. Organizations are told to save all the emails, and for hospital, all the medical information need to be saved for 7 years, at least 7 years. That's the law, so big data, the background. We normally use 4 V's to describe data beta, as you may be aware, the volume, velocity, variety, and value. So today, I'm going to cover quite a few things, so volume, velocity, something like that. Yeah. A few years ago, a research group in University of California published a paper on about the cloud, Berkeley's view about the cloud. So in this paper, they have listed as many as 10 challenges, 10 difficulties, 10 obstacles. So the number 4 here, data transfer bottleneck, more or less my research group and focus attention on this. So this is our work, how to struggle with data transfer bottleneck. So this is well used and 7-layer, 5-layer this data communication protocol. So application, socket, TCP, IP, data link, physical. So our work more or less is at the socket level. So socket could be further divided into another sub-layers. As you can see here, BSD and INET socket. Our work is to insert a new layer between these 2 sub-layers. So namely, it's called a socket multiplier. Instead of opening 1 INET socket, we open multiple. Hopefully, the overall performance could be improved, as simple as that. So it's a simple idea. The advantage, obviously, because our newly added layer is sandwiched by existing 2 layers, so you don't need to change the interface at all. So all legacy application could benefit, hopefully, from this newly modified platform without any modification. So next, I'm going to show you a demonstration and of this protocol. So the scenario is, in UK here, we open a local application, namely is a media player, 10,000 kilometers away, 10,000 kilometers away, in Beijing, in China, use internet. We try to play online some video clip remotely online. Let's see what happens. The experience may not be that enjoyable just because 10,000 kilometers is not small distance. Although the signal travel at the speed of light 300,000 kilometers per second in fiber reduced to its half, still some few 100 millisecond latency, and of course problem. So in the context of European Commission sponsored project, Euro-Asia Grid, namely I'm the leader of this one, same scenario, 10,000 kilometers distance, play online, video clip. So shall we say it makes a difference? Yeah, so the new protocol as an option for people. So here is a summary of data communication protocol. In this row, you'll see a number of popular applications, including data mining, OpenOffice, database, Firefox, media player I demonstrated just now. Google Earth, you know, they are typical application hungry for bandwidth for high-speed transport. Here, this column, you see the performance improvement. Namely, it is the speed up, how many times you can speed up, you can accelerate. Yeah, so you can see here from 2 to 10 times you can speed up existing applications. Yeah. I may skip a few slides. If you're interested in technical details, of course, we could discuss after the presentation offline. Some comments for this work, and if you apply for the UK government grant or European Commission grant, those organizations, funding bodies, send an independent reviewer to review your project. So this is some encouraging comments. So this work has won a few honoraries. For example, this ACM IEEE and Super Computing Award a few years ago. This is my group. You can see some partner from industry as well. So we have received quite a few grants from the European Commission and the UK government, totaling a few million euros. So here is a summary of this sort of work, new data communication protocol to struggle with the so-called data transfer bottleneck in cloud computing big data. So traditionally, we have a number of techniques. At the very, very beginning, we don't need such a distributed things. So everything is local. Gradually, people try to separate different things. We got this one, namely is a multi-stream, take full advantage of the bandwidth, something like that. So grid, cloud, big data. Before I move on to next topic, green computing, do you have any questions about this piece? Yeah?
The reason for the speed up, because you distributed whatever data, the big data you have, or because of the protocol, or parallel transmission, or...
Yeah. The background is, there is a famous law in the internet. So in IT integrated circuit industry, there is a famous law called Moore's law. Every 18 months, every 12 to 18 months, the integration density get double. In the internet, the bandwidth even faster, every 9 months to 12 months get doubled. So the problem is the traditional data communication protocol, they are designed, originated a few decades ago, more or less they're conservative. At that time, the infrastructure was not that reliable. You have to keep shaking your hands, so lowering down on the efficiency. So how to fill the gap between the maximum bandwidth and actually use bandwidth is the key of this sort of work. So you need to keep modifying your data communication protocol to narrow the gap. Anyway, the bandwidth increases very fast. Yeah, so existing data communication protocol little bit conservative. So multi-stream just one aspect. There are others, dynamics, numbering, or things like that. A lot of technical details could be discussed. I'm happy to discuss with you later. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your question.
Thank you. Okay, let me move on to the next piece of our research, green computing. So currently, I work for University of Kent. Before that, I was with a different organization, namely it's called Cambridge-Cranfield High Performance Computing Facility. I was leading a research center in grid computing there. So this organization was jointly established by Cambridge University and Cranfield University with an investment size of £40 million. There, we are running such a supercomputer. This supercomputer was not that good, was not that bad. It was ranked number 300 in the world. You know, every 6 months, and the people refresh a list of supercomputers, namely the top 500. Have you heard of this one? So we are number 343rd. Not good, not bad. So my question is, to maintain such a position, 300 in the world, and how much water bills and electricity bill every year we need to cover? I give you 4 numbers. 4,000 pounds makes sense. 40,000, 400,000, 4 million pounds. Every year, how much do we need to pay? 400,000. Still is big. Yeah. Every year, electricity bill. We need to, don't forget, we need to cover the water bills for cooling. And every year, number 300, we need to pay this one. So we're desperate for green computing, and the computer is a monster consuming too much power. So that's background. So some information here, and if you include mobile phone as a computer, so I think more than 1 billion computer on this planet. So what is green computing? By definition, green computing means my machine here is not a physical machine anymore. I study the relationship between this computer and the environment. So that is green computing. So some facts you may get surprised. For example, if you run a small business and half your budget may go to IT related something, and your power, electricity bill, something like that, may oversee your hardware investment. Regulations are being introduced in Europe, in USA. So I don't know how many people are traveling from outside Europe this time. Do you know your air ticket, how much money you need to pay to the European Commission? And namely, is a carbon emission tax or something like that? How much? Your ticket, your air ticket? 20%? No, 10 euros. Roughly 10 euros you pay European Commission to cover. It's a new regulation, so for emission tax. Yeah. I know some countries are not happy with this. Yeah, they refuse to pay. To study green computing, and the theory is the 2 laws, or maybe 3 laws. The first law of thermodynamics, the second law of thermodynamics. So we need to refresh our memory together. I hope you still remember the first law of thermodynamics. What's that? The first law is here. What's that? Yeah, so the total amount of energy is a constant. That's first law. You cannot create, you cannot destroy, you can change the format from one form to another, but you cannot change the total amount, first law. The second law is more important for green computing. The second law is here. Second law is associated with a new definition called entropy. So entropy, what is entropy? I give you two options, and useful energy, useless energy. What does entropy represent? Useless or useful? Useless, useless. The total amount, the same. That is good news. The bad news is, you know, with progress of time, the total amount of useful energy of this universe keep going down. That is why it is a matter of urgency to protect this planet, to protect ourselves. So because entropy, the second law is about entropy. Entropy keep increasing, keep increasing. So eventually we all here, dead end. So nothing, no activity. Yeah, so that's very bad news. Yeah, so we need to protect ourselves. So a few years ago, my friends and myself, we jointly launched a magazine, Green Computing. So I would like to use one example to finish the introduction of this piece of research. So this is a paper we published a few years ago, and namely it's called redundant array hybrid disk on IEEE transactions. So you see two equations, and the first one is a hard disk drive equals some trees, nearly 20 trees. The second equation you see is a disk plus something, flash memory, 3 trees. So what does it mean by this, the first one, 20 trees? Why disk equivalent to 20 trees? Disk energy, yeah, energy. So typical lifetime for disk is 2 to 4 years. So during the lifetime of hard disk drive and other IT equipment, so the energy need to be consumed. To produce those energy, you need to burn oil, coal, something. So the emission need 20 trees to compensate. In which way to compensate? So CO2 need to be converted, need to be absorbed by trees and converted to oxygen for human life, yeah, for all living things. So in this way, one disk, that surprising fact, one disk, one single disk equals 20 trees, 20 trees. So our work is to introduce new data management strategy, and instead of storing old data on the hard disk drive, most of data still in disk drive, but frequently used data in flash memory at the front end. So hopefully most of the requests could be served by the front end. We spin off the background hard disk drive. So most of times hard disk drive stop working. In this way, save energy. Of course, you need to carefully design your data management strategy. So to make sure the performance is not sacrificed too much. Yeah, so it's a balance, it's a trade-off of energy saving, environment protection, and the performance. We sacrifice the performance. Sometimes if you missed out, the data not there, you have to restart your disk. Yeah, but highly likely could be served by the front end. So the measurement shows and equivalence 3 trees only. How many times we save the energy consumption? So this is a typical example for green computing. So before I move to next piece, do you have any question about green computing?
Exactly, disk flash memory disk on module similar to cache disk.
Yeah.
It's similar.
Yeah.
What's the difference between here to cache disk and this your module?
So the flash memory, yeah. Yes. So it's like a cache, yeah. So yeah. Most of data and you on a regular basis, and you try to measure the frequency of the data. So ensure frequent frequently used data in the flash. Flash is a non-mechanical component. So disk, you need to rotate. You need to move the magnet head.
Yes, I know, but there's no effect for the energy. But you here, you look for to decrease the energy.
Yeah, we
from 20
spin off the
on.
disk. Most of the time, the disk stop working. So in this way, we save energy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you only see flash working. Yeah, so.
Thanks for your question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, could you rise for us, please, Mr. Silva?
Thank you. Professor, why not change immediately to solid-state disks? Why continue with the disks?
You go to PC workshop, you know how expensive SSD and disk drive cheap. So it's always a balance, compromise, trade-off. Yeah. The performance much better, the energy consumption much lower, but the cost.
Yeah, but the same a few years ago when we start with the normal disks, the cost was very high for big disks, and then they start mass production, and the cost lower. So
relatively, an SSD is still more expensive than like my Microsoft Surface One, and 1,000 pounds. Normal laptop just 300 pounds, 400 pounds. This is purely SSD.
Yeah,
it's good to carry around, but expensive. Yeah. Another lady question. Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
I'm aware there are some work done on cooling the computer systems using liquid called Novec by the company that originated at Leeds University, and it's called Isotope.
Yeah.
We have such a computer at the University of Huddersfield in our innovation center. And it is, I think, way forward in future on removing the excess energy generated by our computing equipment and reuse it. And what we are doing at the university, we are reusing it, heating the radiators. So there are ways of using that energy that is being harvested from the computing system and use it usefully.
That's good. That's
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
If you were interested, could send you a link of a project I did in Holland to heat up an entire church, a cathedral, by building a data center under the church. So the heat of the data center heats up not only the floor, but also the air. It's a brilliant way of reusing energy. Thank you for your questions.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So next is brain computing or brain-like computers. Let me start with two photos. Two photos about the same river, the longest river in Africa. What's the river? River Nile, yeah. Actually, it is longest in the world, I was told. River Amazon may be largest in volume, but the length, River Nile is the longest in the world. Anyway, this is a bird's view from satellite, same river, same part in Egypt, yeah. So what's different between these two photos? So this one, the same year, different months, in May, in August. What different between these two photos? Same river, same region. What? You see white bits. What are they? Flood. Yeah, August, flood. It's a flooding season. Flood, yeah. So year by year, and year by year, and Egyptian and flooded by the same river and around the same time of the year. So eventually, 5,000 years ago, they decided to record all these regular phenomenon in a calendar. That's first calendar of the world. 5,000 years ago, ancient Egyptian invented calendar, which was viewed as the mark of modern history civilization. So calendar, people and record and use this as a guidance and for the daily activities, agriculture, hunting, whatever. Yeah, so calendar, 5,000 years ago. For brain computing, We are interested in those kind of things. For example, let's check what happens in nature. This is called amoeba. You must have heard of amoeba, yeah. It's very tiny, very small. You have to use microscope to observe, very small. It's very simple. It is a single one cell. It's not complicated at all. It's one cell. Amoeba can swim. Do you know that? They live in water. They can swim. They change their body shape. No hand, no foot, but they can swim. Yeah. A few years ago, a Japanese group, 2008, Japanese group carried out a famous experiment, and they put amoeba in the tube. This tube full of seawater and is long enough. Amoeba can only do one-dimensional swimming movement, one dimension. So they use microscope to observe, to measure amoeba's swimming speed, velocity. As you can see here, they control the temperature of seawater. So that's why here you see the temperature here. So they just change the temperature between 26 degrees and 22 degrees. The difference only 4 degrees. And they measure, they use microscope to measure the amoeba speed. You know, sometimes it's comfortably swimming amoeba. And sometimes you see the speed drop to 0. So amoeba stop swimming. When you lower down the temperature to 22 degrees, yeah. So 26, they feel comfortable, swimming relaxingly, comfortably, happily. But if you drop by 4 degrees, 22 degrees, they stop swimming, they feel uncomfortable. As if I drop you to North Pole from a helicopter, you get frozen, and so you stop moving. As simple as that. So the time difference between those powers is 1 hour. Every 1 hour, I drop the temperature for 30 seconds, something like that. So every time when you drop the temperature, amoeba stop, stop, stop. At the end of hour 4, no temperature drop. What happened to amoeba? Stop, stop. So at the end of hour 5, similar thing happened, but amoeba may get confused. It's not that drop to 0. End of 6, 7, you see strange behavior. Amoeba get confused. After many hours, you drop the temperature again. Obviously, amoeba stop swimming. Okay. After that, you see some similar phenomenon. So this experiment and makes us to ask ourselves maybe 3 questions. The first question is, can amoeba remember the past? Can amoeba predict the future? Number 3, how does amoeba know time? I mean, 1 hour is 1 hour. Do you think our human being possess such an ability to predict time accurately? Without watch, you know 1 hour is 1 hour? Amoeba, such a simple organism, one cell, simple, no heart, no brain, one cell, yeah. Why? Amoeba outperform our human being. Our human being invented calendar 5,000 years ago. How many years amoeba exist on this planet? Much more than 5,000 years. It shames our human beings. Do you think so? Such a small, tiny things, yeah. At least remember something in the past, predict the future, the end of hour 4, hour 5, and stop. He predicted and something could happen. Actually not, but he predicted. He know 1 hour is 1 hour. That's another important thing, yeah. So that is why, and we need to learn a lot from nature, yeah. So we need to design our next generation of computers by learning from nature, Yeah, so that is a brain-like computer. So let me introduce my friend, Professor Leon Chai. He lives in London now. Yeah, so although he retired from University of California, I got a European grant for him. Relaxingly, he enjoyed himself in London. In 1971, Professor Leon Chai invented the memristor. 37 years later, and a few years ago, and a Hewlett-Packard group, this group, and they reported they have discovered Leon's invented memristor. So 41 years ago, and Leon just produced a theory or formulation and or a name definition. So the physical device was made successfully just a few years ago, 37 years after Leon's prediction. So they published the paper in Nature. So the memristor missing circuit element found. So memristor is such a device and which link charge and flux, charge and flux. So this is a table which helped Leon and discover his memristor. So if you list the 4 physical attributes here, you got voltage, current, charge, and flux. Naturally, the resistor should be here linking voltage and current. Does it make sense? It's a two-terminal device, resistor. If you apply voltage, you receive current. Yeah, resistor should be here. So does it make sense to put capacitor here, linking voltage and charge? 2 parallel plates. If you apply a voltage, so you get charge. So plus, minus attract each other, never touch each other, is a capacitor. Similarly, and the inductor should be here, is a coil inductor. You know, the Faraday's rule, if you apply a current, you got flux, am I right? A coil, so coil should be here. So then he said, my God, the Q and the V, nothing to link them. There must be something there to link Q and phi. If the world was created by the God, it should be complete. There should not be any missing link, am I right? He strongly believed this. So he said, there must be something linking Q and phi. This world should be complete. Yeah. So it is interesting story to tell here. So it's nearly 40 years discovery, exploration, and eventually people succeeded in making such a device, such an element. So we are using this device, memristor, and his sister's inductor here, to construct such a simple circuit here. Very simple. You see resistor, memory, inductor, and the capacitor here. Such a simple circuit, more or less, could reproduce the behavior, as you can see in Amoeba's behavior. So which implies, and there may be something similar to memristor, and in all living things, help you to remember what happened in the past. You know, memristor, the name comes from a combination of memory plus resistor. Yeah, memory, remember what happened in the past. Help us, help amoeba, help other living things. Even in the plants, and a few months ago, a group of Russians published a paper. They found the memristor in plants. So it's a generic phenomenon. In this case, and these memristor things help us to reproduce amoeba's behavior. So that is why we are in a better position, and thanks to the invention of memristor, to design next generation computer. We learn from the nature, yeah. So here is some experiment, simulation, and how we reproduce amoeba's behavior by memristor. So we published a paper in this neural network adaptive neuromorphic architecture. This is our paper. So myself and my colleagues, yeah. Another example, I got a few minutes. Yeah. Is Pavlov's dog. Before that, some background information here. A neural network computer is not new idea, but over past decades, how many decades, and the difficulty is the implementation of synapse. You know, neural net computer got two key components. One is a neuron, the other is a synapse. Neuron relatively simple. You can use traditional semiconductor technology to fabricate neuron. It's like small computer, microcontroller. Synapse is difficult to implement. If you use the same technology, semiconductor integration technology to implement synapse, it doesn't make sense. Just because one neuron could be connected to 20,000 synapses. So synapse have to be small, as simple as that. Otherwise, how can you link one neuron to 20,000 synapses? If you use same technology to implement both of them, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, impossible. That's the difficulty over past how many decades. But now, and thanks to the invention of memristor, the invention opens a new way to revive traditional neural network computers. So that's the key contribution of this one. Actually, my colleagues at Cambridge University, they succeeded in making a half nanometer memristor junction, so half nanometer. So it is possible now, and one neuron and connect many synapses. So Pavlov's dog is famous. If you travel in Russia today, and still is a museum, and the dog well preserved. What is his famous experiment? Namely called what? Conditioned reflex experiment. Every time when you serve food to a dog, the dog responds and by generating salivation, because salivation is used to digest the food. So if you ring the bell and the salivation, no generation, because nothing to do with each other. So every time when you serve food, you ring the bell. So after some training, in the future, you ring the bell, and the salivation could be generated by the dog. This is the learning. This is the learning. Again, memristor have some role to play to reproduce such a behavior. As you can see here, we got 3 neurons here, and this is eyes, sight neuron. This is the salivation. So there is a link there at the very beginning. By birth, the link is there. So every time when you serve food, the salivation will be generated. It's like a baby, and if you serve milk, drink, yeah, so it's a natural instinct. But this link doesn't exist at the very beginning. I mean, the sound, the bell, if you ring the bell, and the ear, no link to mouth, because nothing to do with each other, at least at the beginning. So no link. No link could be used, a memristor represent memristor with high resistance at the beginning. You need a training, you need a learning, and to lower down the resistance from disconnection to connection. So memristor has such a role to play. After a few stimulations and the lower down the resistance lower and lower. Eventually, disconnection become connection. So next time when you ring the bell and the dog respond by generating salivation. So that is learning. That is a brain-like computer. So from high resistance to low resistance. So some experiment. So this work published in Journal of Applied Physics. So delay switching applied to memoristic neural networks. Okay, I got a last piece. I got 15 minutes left, I think. Yeah, so because interactive question already incorporated in my presentation, yeah. Do you have any question before I move to the last piece?
Yes.
What's your opinion about neural computers? We are still far away from understanding how human brain works. It's so complex, and with growing complexity, the new qualities are growing. It's non-reductionist, actually.
Yeah.
There are also fields, and also,
yeah.
So it's, when people say that we will soon have neural computers, it's just not wrong. Professor Obama, half a year ago, announced greatest project in history, understanding human brain. And as far as I know, even in Europe, there will be 1 billion euros.
Yeah.
Do you know this project, and do you cooperate with this?
Yeah. Memoristic work represents a small step. I know it's a long way to go. And you mentioned the ambitious European project, brain science. Actually, my friend Steve Ferber from Manchester University is a key player of this ground.
This project.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with you. Long way to go.
Yes.
But some positive progress.
Thanks very much.
Then again, when you started so beautifully with the history of computing in 1822, people would have said the same thing about any computer that we have today, right? Yeah. Any more questions that we might address? Then you can take in the, your time, because we have the questions done now.
Yeah. So the last piece is the future computing. We got memoristic invented by Leon, and based on this table with 4 attributes, 4 elements, memoristic is supposed to be element number 4. But I'm not comfortable with this table, to be honest. Although Leon is my good friend, and I may challenge him on his table. This table historically helped him to invent memoristic. This table got a few concerns. For example, the unit. You know, the memoristic name is a combination of memory resistor, which imply the memoristic got something similar to resistor. For example, the unit. Do you have to know the unit of memoristic is O, the same as the resistor? But others, they're different. Capacitor got F, Faraday, and inductor got H, Henry. They're totally different. But these two sharing the same unit. Does it make sense? If this table is a fundamental element, a table of fundamental elements, and the 2 elements sharing the same unit, do you think such a classification makes sense? I started to think about this a few years ago. Another anomaly is something to linear, nonlinear. Number 3 is internal links. In Leon's table, and he used 2 clauses to link voltage and phi, the flux. This is by definition, you know, V and d phi dt over d phi over dt. Q and I, this is the definition. This is Faraday's rule. Yeah. Anyway, so in the so-called fundamental table, you have introduced some internal links to link something. I think this is unfair. Linkage means what? Means you can reproduce something from another thing, which implies these 2 things, they are not fundamental. If they are fundamental, how can you reproduce banana from apple? They are different. If you can reproduce one thing from another, which implies they are associated, they are not fundamental. You cannot further divide. So I think this internal link is not good. Something else, I may skip it, negative things, yeah. So I try to classify existing elements in a new way. So namely, it's a triangle rather than square. Yeah, triangle. So in this triangle, resistor, memoristor, they're in the same family member. Naturally, they share the same unit, ohm, that is ohm. Not only these two, you should extend more. For example, first order, second order, third order is unlimited. So similarly, for a capacitor or memory capacitor group, family member, they share the same unit, and but they got first order, high orders. Similar thing happened to inductor. So it's a reorganization. So simply speaking, is a triangle to replace the square. So if I'm not humble enough, shall we say this is similar to from Earth-centric universe to Sun-centric universe. Actually, this idea, more or less, I was inspired by a traditional Asian Chinese philosopher, Lao Tzu, and who said, and three give birth to everything, to all things, 10,000 things. Actually, is here, and this is three, Chinese, I don't know. This is generation, this is 10,000, this is things. Yeah, three generates 10,000 things. So from square to triangle, yeah, this is my recent work. So nowadays, we could find a lot of examples, and three, they are basic, they are fundamental, rather than four. For example, in engineering, and three colors, primary colors, RGB namely, and red, green, blue, produce many, many colors. Yeah, that's important when you design a television set. Otherwise, you need how many guns? You just need 3 guns. So 3 colors, you mix up, yeah, you produce many colors. 3 are essential. Another example, and is FEM, finite element method. I'm quite sure a lot of people are familiar with this. Yeah. Any shape could be approximated by many triangles. Yeah, that's another example. Triangle 3, better, yeah. In biology, we got a similar thing. So 3 are basic, are fundamental. So we're talking about the importance of tables. Tables help us in many ways. For example, in chemistry, Mendeleev invented the periodical table of chemical elements. So that is well used, everybody familiar with it in old textbooks, yeah. Don't forget, at the very, very beginning, Mendeleev's table is not this shape. This is a photo in, I forgot the name of the city, and Czech Republic, yeah. So at the beginning, as you can see here, Mendeleev's table is circular, is not today's shape. I mean, the table could change its shape over the history. Peter Higgs, 2 years ago, the Nobel Prize winner, he predicted in 1960s, and Higgs boson, yeah. So Higgs boson was supposed to be the last one of the table of 61 fundamental particles. So after the discovery, you know, he got Nobel Prize, the CERN discovery, and now the table is complete. You know, the table play very important role and in subjects, yeah. The last example I would like to mention here in terms of highlighting the importance of table is in astronomy, solar system, table of planets in solar system. We are quite familiar with all these planets, except for this one. How many people know this Ceres? It is planet, but not that famous, yeah? So 200 years ago, roughly, I could remember clearly, these two gentlemen, they work out a formula here, they work out a table here. They try to associate an integer to each planet, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they could use this integer to calculate the distance from this planet to the sun. We're talking about the solar system. For example, the Earth to the sun is normalized as 1, okay? Then Mercury 0.4, Venus and 0.7, Mars 1.6, something like that. And the formula is here, based on the integer associated to that planet. They can calculate the distance from the planet to the sun. Yeah, as simple as that. Then they found one row missing, this one. There must be a planet there associated with integer 3 with such a distance to the sun, 2.8. But it took people about 100 years to discover this planet. Today, it was discovered this is a planet. Why it took so long? The theory is still correct. The table was correct. The formula is correct. Otherwise, it need to be rewritten. But it's correct. Eventually, the table is complete. But why it took so long to discover this planet? Just because very small. It's similar to the size of the moon. But nobody say a planet should be big. Am I right? By definition, object orbiting around the sun is a planet. So it's too small to be discovered. So it took a long time for people. But the theory is correct. That's important. The table is important. In terms of at this distance, 2.8, you need to keep observing. Sooner or later, you should discover something there. Am I right? So the theory is important to guide your practice. Yeah, I'm talking about future computing. I'm talking about the basic table, basic classification is important. So from square to triangle, so we are in a position to reclassify existing elements. We got capacitor, we got inductor, resistor. And the table, more importantly, and put us in a position to predict new elements, to design new computers, next generation computer, future computers. That's the key of my research here. So research was published most recently, IEEE transaction circuit. So this is myself and Professor Leon Chai. The importance is we may predict, we may make new elements to design new computers. Again, we have this evolutionary history of computer science started roughly nearly 200 years ago. Charles Babbage, first mechanical computer. So one by one, I have covered some key milestones. Yeah. So we should be in a better position to predict what happens in the future. Some points about the future computers. So concept, technology developed within computer science are starting to impact other subjects. So computer is not computer only. So computer impact other subjects. Computer is becoming literacy. Yes, everybody has to know computer before carry out the research, any subject. So nowadays, we are forming different knowledge community to tackle the problem that were traditionally solved by individual, but not anymore. We need to form community. We need to form group, teamwork. That's why we need those key technology and to equip ourselves. For example, service. We need service to encapsulate resources to share. We need intelligence. We need connectivity to exchange information and to link ourselves. We need mobility. We want to work anytime, anywhere, and we need interactivity. We need a user-friendly interface, something like that. Computer science will be at the heart of any future revolution and in business, science, and society. That's all for my talk. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Frank Wang.